Right. Okay, good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you joining us today for this special session organized by SIyane Toastmasters Club. My name is Ravindu, and I'm truly excited to be hosting this session, getting started with story writing. Now, let me ask you something. How many of you have had a story in your mind, but never actually written it down? Maybe you thought you weren't ready, maybe you thought you weren't a writer. Well, today's session is here to change that because storytelling isn't just for authors, it's for anyone who has something to say. And today, we are not just talking about stories, we are taking the first step to becoming storytellers. To guide us on this journey, we have a very special guest with us, Vishva Lakshapathiarachchi. Vishwa picked up a pen at just 15 and never really put it down. Since then, he has written over 15 short stories, hundreds of poems and essays, songs, TV ads, and even YouTube content that has crossed 500,000 views. All of this while building a career as an engineer and raising a daughter. Interestingly, Vishwa himself says that for many years he didn't even call himself a writer. But that changed. Today, he is working on a novel rooted in Hindu mythology and Indian steampunk, and he has fully embraced his identity as a storyteller. A major influence in his journey was legendary writer Ray Bradbury. Through Bradbury, Vishwa discovered that a short story can be lyrical, strange, and powerful all at once. Not a limitation, but a form of precision. He has taken his craft to competitive levels, earning shortlists and reaching final rounds. And here's something I personally love. For Vishwa, the short story is not just a stepping stone, it is the purest form of storytelling where every word matters. And a single moment can hold an entire world. And his belief is simple yet powerful. If you can write a short story, you can write anything. He also shares his thoughts and ideas through his popular YouTube podcast series, Wishfire, among many other creative projects. So, today, let's learn, explore, and most importantly, start. Without a further ado, please join me in welcoming our guest speaker for today, Vishwa Lakshapathiarachchi. Vishwa, the stage is yours.
All right. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you, Ravindra. And thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come and talk about something I can't shut up about, which is stories and which is writing. And it's lovely to be here. It's lovely to be in a place where uh, everybody understands that stories are important, stories are hard to write, but we have to do it because that's what we do as humans. Like the introduction said, I started at 15. I still don't feel like a writer most of the days. I still struggle with sitting down and staring at the blank page and asking myself, do I really want to do this? This is what I want to do with my life? And I walk out and then I go out of the room and 3 seconds later I realize, no, that's what I want to do. This is who I choose to be now. Today's session, I'm going to keep it a bit structured, not completely structured. I might go off my script. That's part of being a writer as well. I'll talk about that in a bit. Uh, the first bit, I want to talk about the philosophy of stories, like why do we tell stories? What's the importance of it, and what makes a story, and why it's so important to us as humans. And then a bit of the science side of the stories, why we have these things in a more of a scientific perspective. And once you understand that, it becomes much easier to write stories because the logical sense makes sense. And the other part would be giving you actual practical tips on actually how to get words on paper and how to write a better story and some things I use. I'll start with my personal journey a little bit more. Like I said, 15, I started studying English literature and I really liked it. But up until that point, I've been reading in both languages for a really long time since I was like 4. I still remember the first book I read. I don't remember how many books I've read. I don't remember how many times I've read the same book over and over again. I literally have books in front of me that I read as a child. I've lost and somehow found their way back to me. And I still treasure these stories. I still live in these worlds because growing up in Sri Lanka, like in that difficult times, especially given the culture, given the school system, given the parents, and all these things. Escapism was something I think we all can relate to. We loved disappearing into a story. We loved living someone else's problems than ours. And I think we can all relate to that part of childhood where we disappeared into books. And I don't always mean childhood. I've met a lot of people who found reading as a hobby once they grew up and they really loved it, and they found that escapism is not just when you're a kid. Yes, even as an adult and even as whoever you are, you can disappear into a story and live in it. So I started writing at 15. I started with poetry, of course, like most of us do, and many of us do. I was in love, and I started. I'm old. I'm 36 years old now. So like back in the day, it was just a tiny little Nokia phone, and writing these poems to this girl I really loved, and just 140 text message like, characters. So like all the things are like combined together, letters, numbers, and it was an interesting way to write. And then I took that writing into social media back in the day, mostly on Facebook, posting these poems, and people telling me, "Whoa, I really like this poem. I really like this way of writing, and I really like what you're trying to say." And that really helped me to continue being a writer. Then, of course, the negative comments come in, and people are like, "I don't understand what you're saying," and they are like, "This is not how you use grammar. That's not how you spell beginning." And it's not like we had Grammarly and AI and everything back in the day, so we had to get better as we go. And that's the important part as a writer, that you need to practice. And I did. I kept writing even though all these things people said, even the good and the bad. I was just mute to it, because that's the thing with telling a story. Like, when you tell somebody a story, they might get it right away, they might not, they might sit with it, and they might get angry, they might get happy. It's not up to you as the writer or the creator or the storyteller to decide how the reader or the listener feels. It's up to them, and you just have to take it, because there's no way you can change that. Anyway, I kept on writing, and then I in 2018 I released my first poetry and short story collection, Undercurrents. That was a more of a gift to my younger self. Like, look, we kind of made it. We are not that bad as we thought. People like us, and then it's still out there in the world, and people have read it, people love it, and it was a good experience to uh, write that. And then, of course, I moved on to writing TV ads and YouTube and short stories, which I really adore, and I will talk about it lots more. So today I'm, like I said, about to finish my novel, and working on a couple of more short story collections, and one in Sinhala and one in English. And Yeah, it's been a long journey, and I think that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I feel like I have something to say, and something that I want to share with everybody who's starting, because you've already done the hard part if you started. If you thought about starting, you've already done the hard part. If you are in the middle of it, you've already done the hard part. And if you're doubting yourself, you're literally doing the hard part, because the hardest part is getting over the doubt. So I'll talk about what a story is first, and why we have stories. Before that, I want to do a little exercise with you guys. So if you can think of a story, not a novel, not a TV show, not a movie, not a comic or anything, just something that happened to you as a person. It can be today, like, you woke up, you had uni or work or something, you forgot your laptop, you showed up and, oh, yeah, I forgot my laptop, I had to go back. Just a story, like, just an incident that happened to you. Something with a beginning, a middle, and an end. I want you to think of that. And while I'm talking about this thing, just keep playing that image of the sequence of images of that story. It doesn't have to be something grand. It doesn't have to be the breakup of the century. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular like that. Because often when we talk about stories, we think it needs to be the Lord of the Rings level. You know, it has to be this multi-billion-dollar movie. If it's not a story, then it's not a story. Uh, when I was around 8 years, 7 years old, like when people come to see my father or my mom, I just run up to them and I'd be like, "Do you want to listen? Do you want to hear a short story?" They're like, "Cool, all right." And I say, "A dog was born, the dog lived, and the dog died. The end." And I just run away to the room and thinking this is the funniest thing ever because like this person was expecting a short story and I gave them the shortest story ever. I'm not saying the 8-year version of me is some genius who figured it out how to write a story, but in the essence of it all, that's what a story is. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's very similar to life. We born, we live, and we die, and the story is the same. You start somewhere, then some things in the middle happen, and then somehow there's a resolution. Now, the best writing advice I've ever got was all writing advice is garbage, including this one. That's because we as humans have different ways of telling the same story. Like if we we go through an incident, and if you get eyewitness accounts from different people, we say it in a different pace. We start at different places. We middle is different, the ending is different because we have gone through different avenues of life to get here. We have different cultural backgrounds, biases, and beliefs, and religions, and all these things feed into who we are, and that changes our voice and how we see things. So that's what I believe as a story in the very, very primal sense. Everything else uh, is just it's just detail. Like it's just icing on the cake. You need the cake is 3 layers. You have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then why do we have stories? Like I don't think crows and cows and dogs and dolphins they don't have stories. They just hang out. They just enjoy the world, and they're just fine. Uh, for that to understand that, we have to look back at the human evolution. Like why we got better as a pack animal is because our ability to communicate. And I'm at the perfect place to talk about communication. This is why you guys gather, right? You just want to talk better and tell better stories, make sense of things, and that predates his civilization. It predates our hunter-gatherer lifestyle. It helped us stay alive in the jungle because we would go out to the jungle to hunt. We would go out to the world to explore, and then we would come back to the group. We come back to the campfire, and we say, "Hey, don't go there. Snakes. Just stay away. Snakes." That was the story. That was the warning. And if you like stories like what do you call it, Sleeping Beauty, and all these like Brothers Grimm stories, like from Germany, these folk stories, like something I absolutely love. Sri Lanka has some amazing folk stories. So all folk stories do is give a warning. And Brothers Grimm is the perfect example of it. Like, don't go into the jungle, you'll die. Like, so that created this whole idea that we have to constantly tell stories to each other and keep each other informed and entertained at the same time. So we looked at the stars and we created the constellations. Like the universe does not care that there's a Big Dipper. Like it does not. It has no idea that Big Dipper exists. And in 2000, 3000 years, that's going to change and Big Dipper will not even be there. But we etched it into our human story saying that constellations means this, that when Orion comes from this side and Scorpio goes from this side, that's because they're chasing each other across the sky. That's not a real thing. That's not a real thing. We built it up to make sense of the universe, to connect with the stars, to tell that we matter here, that our presence have some sort of a meaning. So that's what stories gave humanity. Survival and meaning. That's what stories give us. That's why we spend billions of dollars on movies and books and everything. That's why we cannot get out of watching TV. That's why Netflix is such a big business because we live to consume stories, we live to tell stories, we even gossip. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of people, including myself, who loves gossip. I would tell you, like, oh no, I don't like gossip. No, 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 I'm above that. No, don't tell me, don't. But at the same time, tell me what happened. How do I sharpen my moral code? Like, how do I sharpen my ability as a human to be a better human? What's wrong these days? What's good these days? What's in these days? What's the meme these days? So all this is a way of storytelling. It's just a belief, and it's just this shared thing we have as humans. So one of the best books I've read about, I've read a lot of books about writing because I really enjoy talking about, like, other people talking about craft. And one of the best books is The Science of Storytelling. I think its name is Will Storr. He talks about stories in this whole scientific way, how psychology of it all works. And it's a quite dry book. He has some beautiful language, but the content can be a bit dry. But the idea is that the human brain is a survival tool. It's not built to think. It's not built to imagine or anything. It was built for survival. It was built to run away from tigers. So, uh, and it cannot fathom the beauty and the grandness of the universe. So we have to create, the brain creates a model of the universe, and then this model creating requires a narrative. Somebody has to say, this is this. Like, for example, you're looking at me and, oh, he's wearing a blue shirt. That's pretty cool. No. At an atomic level, blue does not exist. Your brain says that is blue because your ancestors used to go out in the jungle and pick up ripe fruit, and that created the brain's ability to see colors. So without a narrative, the brain is very lonely. So we have to create narratives. And that's why we have villains in the world today. We hate Trump. We don't like this guy. We hate that person. We don't like this guy. We don't like that person. And then there are heroes. In our head, us, the version you call your name, the version you think you are, is the hero. Whatever you do, you're not wrong, because otherwise the narrative breaks down. We have to be the hero. The hero building is something Will Storr talks about a lot. I highly suggest, if you're starting out, you go and read Science of Storytelling, because beautiful book, beautiful way of talking about the craft, beautiful way of letting people know what a story is. And once you understand that brain craves narratives, you get out of that self-doubt, because you realize, however I say this, there's going to be somebody who will grasp this story. Like, there's somebody's going to understand this. Because can you think of a book or a story that's universally loved? No. People hate Harry Potter. People hate, like, Star Wars and this and every, Marvel. And personally, I'm not a big fan either. But, like, that's the thing. Stories have fans, and stories have people who don't really like it. And the barrier as a writer I had was, what if no one likes it? And then someone came along and said, like, what if someone likes it? And that really shifted the whole concept of why I'm writing. The other thing I recently realized was, I shouldn't be the one to read my stories, because that's not my job, right? My job is to write. What I enjoy is writing. I'll go in deep depth about this in the tips and tricks part, but for now, let's go back to the whole idea why it's like the brain craves these narratives, because again, like, we have to have heroes and villains in our lives, like, we form cliques, because deep down we are still in the jungle. I mean, yeah, sure, we have the internet. I can send you my face across the internet and all that, but if you go to the comment section of anything, like, you can see people fighting over stories. If you look at all the wars that have ever existed, mainly based on belief systems, like we'll start with, like way back in, like, the classic world, and then the modern world, the medieval times, and everything. It's all about beliefs. It's all about us calling someone a villain, us calling someone a hero. We follow the hero, we fight the villain. We defeated the Empire in Star Wars. We fought the orcs in Lord of the Rings, and, like, we hate Voldemort, and, like, we don't even say his name. He's that much of a villain. So, so, so you see that stories are actually built around characters, because if you if you believe the story is only plot or only character, that's not really right. I mean, that you can't have character or plot. You have to have both of them. And all good stories have really good characters. Like people resonate with the character, what they feel, what they go through. So the plot is just a track, or just a way the story unfolds. It's a sequence of events that the character has to go through, and we stick to the character. We identify with the character. That's why when we watch or read Hunger Games, we want to go out there and be Katniss. We want to be this person. We get angry, and like when I was when I was a kid, I really liked Muddle. I think I've read Muddle like few billion times. I think, like, I'm not even kidding, like I think I have read it a billion times, because I had to do it for literature, right? So when I was a kid, I read it in Sinhala like so many times. Like literally, I come home after school, I read the book, and I start doing everything else, because I really like that escapism, him running away from home. I was the dream back then. I just want to run away from home. I just want to be free. I just want to go to a island and start a farm with my friend, and that was the dream. And that escapism, that feeling that I want to be Upali, I want to be Katniss, I want to be Luke Skywalker, I want to be Spider-Man. That comes because that character went through tough times. All stories are about how humans survive pressure, how humans survive hard times. So if you can think of a time you went through a hardship, we all do. Like there's no way you can tell me, oh, I've had the perfect life. Nothing as bad has ever happened to me. It doesn't have to be, like I said, like when I asked you to think of a story, I told you, don't think of the breakup of the century. Think of something simple. You still had to go through pressure. If you forgot the laptop on your way to work, you have to come back, you have to get a new Uber, or you have to do something. And that is pressure. And pressure changes form. Pressure changes who we are. And that is what a story is. How the pressure changed the person. So the plot is just the canvas you lay it all on. So plot could be like, uh, for example, say, all right, so we write a story, we come up with an idea, all right. So uh, an alien lands in Sri Lanka and goes to PETA and get lost. He doesn't know where to go. So that's the plot. That doesn't really matter. Okay, that anybody can say that. But when you write a story, you can say alien landed in Sri Lanka, went to PETA, got lost in got lost because he couldn't find the bus. That's the plot. Like that's going back to my dog story. That's it. That's an 8-year child's version of a story. But why we relate to the alien is because you've been lost before. You felt like, oh, I don't belong here. The universal connection is what we look for in a story. So to write the universal connection, uh, Bradbury says the best thing. I think the other thing I highly suggest you watch is you go to YouTube, and there's a really good Bradbury lecture from like early 2000s. He's really old there, but he's beautifully putting it down. He talks about write about your fears. It doesn't have to be these grand monsters and goblins and werewolves and all these like scary things. It's the thing that scared you as a human. That's what you have to write about, like taxes and like being forgotten, or like public speaking, or whatever that scares you. So that's why when Bradbury was writing short stories, he wrote a story called The Thing at the Top of the Staircase. That's what he was scared when he was a child. So if you read The Welt, it's about things on the TV coming alive and coming into the living room. So all these, I'm not saying you only have to write about fear. It could be anything that you can universally connect. I think fear is the most common thing we have as humans. Love is also a common thing. Anger is a common thing. So actually, all emotions are common, even though we don't realize it. So if you can give these emotions to your character, and if you can put them through pressure and show how that emotion changes within the frame of plot. How did the alien land here? How was he like accidentally thrown here? Did his family disown him? How does he feel? Like, what does he feel? Like when then the bus driver is like, oh, where's the money? And like, how does he feel? Like, what is money? He feels confused. He doesn't know what money is. So like all these things need to be packed in a beautiful way that the reader can relate to. Like, it needs to be universal. Nobody should feel excluded. Nobody should feel like, well, what does that mean? You can make the reader ponder and question and all these things. None of these is hard and set rules. Like when you write your story, I want you to be free. I want you to write your own story because that's what writing is. It's an ultimate form of freedom, and that's why it's difficult. Because freedom is a prison on itself. Because we have no constraints, so you have no idea where you stop. Now, for example, from my personal life, when I started writing my novel, when I started conceptualizing my novel, which was 7 years ago, I I wanted to write a science fiction story. Like I thought, cool, there's a planet and there's something, something, something. And then I thought, okay, this is how it's going to go. And then I went through so many iterations, I realized that's not what I want to write. That's definitely not what I want to write. So I kept writing this same story in different ways just in my head. And now it has become this completely different thing. And I built this world way too big to put down on a book. Now I'm doing the best thing I have to do as a writer or a storyteller. That's decision making. Which part do I tell? Like, do I tell the planet's history? Do I tell the composition of the metals? Or do I go full Tolkien and talk about a tree for 300 pages? Or what do I do as a writer? So that's where all these tricks, I wouldn't even call them tricks, these tips I learned along the way as a writer. So one of the first things a couple of things I want to talk about. The first thing, one of the best advices I've got, obviously Bradbury stuff, that's like my Bible. Like that's what I always refer to. I still go and watch that lecture when I feel lost. I still go through pages of uh, science of storytelling. I really suggest you read The Artist Way, Julia Holt, I think that's her name. She talks about how the universe is the original creator and there's a part of the universe in you, and that's why you still need to create. That's why you put yourself through pressure to change form and tell stories. So those are things I really repeat in my life because it helps me remember like why I started this, why I'm doing this. So the uh the thought the one of the best advices I've gotten as writers is that Margaret Atwood said, uh, "You only be you can only be a writer by writing." There's no you can sit and think all you want. I remember thinking about my world as doing all these different jobs in my life. I was driving for so long. I would think about the story, I would visualize it and all these things, but it didn't become a story until I put it down on paper and finalized it. Look, this is the version. This is what I'm going to do. So you become a writer by writing. You become a storyteller by telling stories. So that's one thing. And the other one I really like is writing a story or telling a story can be a Herculean task, like I said, because you don't know where to start, what the beginning is and all that. So when I started writing the novel, one of the best uh, advices I've gotten, more of a model, I would say, like the question, the hypothetical question: how do you eat an elephant? Like that really baffled me when I heard it. The answer is very simple: one bite at a time. You can't eat the whole elephant in one go, so you just have to chip your way through it. Like one of the best advices one of my writer friends gave me when I was writing the novel was like, I was like, look, I'm very inconsistent. Some days I write a whole chapter, some days I don't write anything, and some days I write, I don't know, garbage, and I hate it and I delete it and I have to start over again. She was like, just chip away at it, and one day you feel, okay, this is done. And when I finished the first draft of the novel, that's what I felt. It's extremely incomplete, but the hard part's done, right? So those two really help you start. You have to write, otherwise you'll never finish. Because the other one I really like. You cannot edit an empty page. So that's the third one. Those three. I think you should like keep them in your head when you're telling a story, when you're writing a story. Is that you have to write, you have to understand you can't finish it in one go, and you cannot edit an empty page. All right. So now that I said all that, I'll go to the more practical stuff. Uh, reading. Reading is really important, and that doesn't mean you have to read Shakespeare and all these classic books and all that and all that. Look for me messages in book stories. That's not it. You find a random pamphlet, like some school is promoting their new course. Look for language, like because I worked in marketing and I didn't really like it. I left it because marketing is the ultimate form of storytelling. It hits you where you're insecure, and then it tells you a new story, gives your brain a new narrative of how to come out of that insecurity or fear you're having. So when you read marketing material, you see how language is so playful. Like it's borderline manipulation, and like it tries to change the way you think. Because I believe writing and reading is form of like computer programming. It's a similar thing, because your brain is technically a computer. I'll tell you, don't think about a pink elephant. What are you thinking about, like pink elephant, right? Because like because the brain is easy to trick. I mean, that's why we fall for visual, what do you call it, illusions and all these things, because brain is easy to trick, and language is the best way to trick the brain. So all stories are lies about a truth. So if you can lie your way into somebody's head and tell the truth, that's ultimately storytelling. So uh, the when you read, if you are selective about, a lot of people come to me and ask like, what's a good book to read this? I can't tell you. What do you mean a good book? Like, what does that look like to you, and what does that look like to me? For me, a good book is a short story collection. Tell me like 10 stories in one book. Take me through a whole journey, make me feel things that I've never felt. For some people, it's a novel. For some people, it's poetry. For some people, it's a joke books. For some people, it's a very a non-fiction story about somebody's memoir, somebody's biography. So if you are selective about your reading, you're going to miss out on a whole part of how people write stories. If you sit through bad books, what you consider as bad books or what you consider as bad stories. I've sat through Marvel movies that I didn't want to watch because I want to learn how they tell the story. And they do tell stories in such a good way, they make billions. So you have to figure out how other people tell stories, and that you do that by reading and consuming new stories. So the more stories you consume, and that doesn't mean you sit there and eat the popcorn and drink your drink and like laugh with your friends, or you just read through the story and just get lost in it, because writers are really good at tricking you into bringing you into their world and putting you through this uh, you know this illusion and this magic. So you have to read and consume as a conscious writer. You are not reading to understand the story, you're reading to understand craft. So when you look through craft, when you look at how other people have created stories, and when you dissect them and you ask why this metaphor, why this image, uh, why this way of writing, why is he repeating here, why is she trying to tell me something in subtext. So all these things, once you have this analytical way of understanding stories, the building block starts to fall apart, and then you pick the building blocks you want. For example, I like lyrical language. I like the stream of conscious way of writing, like consciousness of way of writing. And then I like more I like dialogue that feels natural. I like all these different literary elements, and you don't understand that unless you dissect the story and ask yourself, why did I like it, why did I hate it, why did this part make me angry? So that question concept, like when you walk into the story asking a whole bunch of questions, then being there for the journey, you realize, okay, this is why I like it. So the other thing is, you really have to find a muse. You don't have to find a muse as in the sense it has to be a person, it has to be somebody you love. If it's somebody you love, that's amazing to have as a muse. It's like having a muse is like waking up to the morning, like a beautiful morning, that it's just their light fills your world. And as storytellers, a muse is somebody who encourages you to write, and who's somebody who's willing to read your extremely garbage draft and say it's good, and then say like, actually, can you change this, can you do this? So it doesn't have to be someone you're in love with, but it would be amazing if you can do that. But it could be a really good friend. It could be a mentor. It could be like your parents. It could be somebody who's willing to sit with you and help you understand that there is this thing in you, and that's why you write stories. That's why you tell stories. That's why you try to arrange ideas in a certain way to get your message out there in a better way. So having a muse really helps. It's something that you should strive to have. If you don't have, the writing itself can be your muse. It can be the person, like imaginary person that goes through your story and tells this is what you have to do. The other practical tip would be If you can't find a muse, it's always a good idea to find beta readers. So, for example, when I was doing short story competition last year, the first three stories, I didn't really have beta readers. It was just somebody who would read my story and give me good feedback. That really helped. But giving it to somebody you know means there's going to be a bias. Like there's going to be like they're trying to not hurt your tiny little feelings, and that's not how you make a good story. You need to go give it to somebody who can be brutal but constructive at the same time. Somebody would read and say, "It's got bones, but where's the flesh? Why is this metaphor falling? Why is this little sentence really bad here?" And these kind of feedback helps you write better stories, become better writers. So that's really important. And the other thing I would tell you is write poorly, like write really poorly in the beginning. Like when you come up with a short story idea, or if you get a prompt, and if you find something exciting idea that made you feel like, oh, I should write about this, and you sit down in front of your computer and you're like, what do I write? And then you put down the first sentence, and then you're like, this is bad. And that's good. If it's bad, that means it can be better. That's the only thing. So never underestimate the power of a rewrite. So if you think this story is bad, you can read it and you can change it. I've started really bad stories with really good ideas. I've written it completely in different language that doesn't work, and I come up with really bad ideas, written it really good. So the idea is that if you it's not done until you say it's done. It's not done until you hit publish. It's not done until you sit down and tell somebody the story or give the speech or do the presentation. It's not done until you take it out from the draft mode and say, this is it, this is the final form. So the idea of rewrite is extremely important. So tying back to what I said in the early part of the uh, conversation is that you can't edit an empty page. So please fill up the page. Like put down everything you feel about the story, the character, their name, how tall they are, and all that. So my process of writing a story, I would share that with here. I learned this from artists actually. I watch a lot of a lot of people drawing like on TikToks and YouTube and stuff, because they start with a pencil sketch. Nobody goes and just throws color and it becomes a painting. That's impossible. That's not how it works. You start with a pencil sketch. Most of them start with a pencil sketch. So I believe in that too. Like so for me the pencil sketch is the dialogue. So in the alien story, so the alien is like, where is this bus going? That's the first dialogue. And the driver's like, do you have money to get here? That's the second dialogue. So if you line it up, if you line up the dialogues in a certain way, that's your pencil sketch. So if you're just telling a story, if you're just trying to say it out in words, if you're trying to give it a speech, if you're trying to give a presentation, your pencil sketch should be still that. It should be a sketch in the beginning. So because you're not going to tell a story without writing it down, you're going to take some notes. So the first bit should be extremely rough. It shouldn't be polished. You're not trying to polish. You're just trying to get the idea down, and then you build on it. So then next, my personal way of writing a story is that I would add the environmental details. I would say it's an Ashok Leyland, it's a blue color bus and all that, and the wind is like this and all these things, and then sensory details. Without a story without sensory details is difficult, because tying back to the science of storytelling, the brain is like I said, is not the smartest thing ever. It relies on sensory details. So right now I know this room feels like this much of a temperature, but if I tell you it's a rainy day in Peta, and you understand that, and I tell you the smell of the rain, I tell you uh the diesel smell of the bus, and like the sweat smell and all this. When I give you this olfactory, like all these other kinds of senses, the ground, how the ground felt, but the sounds were like the deafening sound of a loud bus and all these things. The more metaphor you add to the sensory detail, more the brain visualizes where the story is happening. So that's the key part of the story. That is the essence, I would call it. The emotions, of course, you are going to add, because when you say he felt lost, of course, like the reader knows, okay, this alien is feeling lost and he cannot figure out how to go back home. But when you say the deafening sound of a loud bus came to a screeching halt and he had to jump out of the way into a puddle and now his feet are wet and all these things, your body starts to feel that, and your brain start to translate that into that visual part of your brain. So a story without sensory details is just not a good story. So I'm not saying only write sensory details. I'm not saying only write metaphor, but when the way you chain it together, the way you take pauses, the way you take how you show how pressure changes form is the essence of a story. So that's definitely key. So the other thing I would say is uh, practice is very important. Like I try to write every day, but it doesn't really work because life. Recently, I came up with this. Like it's something a writer friend, a writer actually I met at a writing festival. She was like, uh, "Life is a life is a series of unfortunate events that keeps me from writing my book." So like that's the biggest challenge you have as a writer because if I go back, but nearly 20 years and tell my mom like, look, I don't want to be an engineer, I don't want to do any of this, I'm going to be a writer, and she'll hit me because like that's not what we believe in our culture. Like nobody wants to say I'm a writer. And that's another thing, if you are pursuing a completely full on writing career, uh, if you're completely gonna spend some time developing a novel, a short story, or anything, I highly suggest you have a second job, like a main job, like you have a way to provide for yourself. Because until a story gets published and sold or becomes something, I don't know if it's relatable to everybody. I'm just putting it out there. Like uh, you have to have a way to fund yourself because there's not a lot of money in writing. There's a lot of money in publishing. There's a lot of money once it becomes a story. Then there's a lot of money in book signings and all these other avenues and merch and movies and all this. But there's no money in writing. There's literally no money in writing. It's something you do with yourself. And the other important thing I really have to stress is a notebook. It doesn't have to be an actual notebook. It doesn't have to be a physical book that you carry around. Uh, for me, of course, I can't have a notebook because my handwriting is extremely bad. That to the point that even I can't read what I've written. I've only written one short story from a pen. When I'm writing songs, of course, I use a pen or a pencil because I want to get my ideas really fast out fast on the paper. So I use my phone. I use Google Keep, which is a note keeping store. It doesn't have to be Google Keep. If you are encumbered by the idea of like, oh, I need to have the perfect tool to write, that's up to you. If you're taking about 15 minutes to set up your tool and get it right, get the font right and everything, that's can be a hindrance unless that's part of your ritual. For me, writing ritual, I don't really have something like that. Uh, the other thing I want to talk about is that the process of writing. For some people it's nighttime. For some people, while they're on the train or the bus or back of a Uber, or like for some people it's after a cup of tea or like a cup of coffee, or for some people it can be anything. So understanding your process of how you develop a story, where you develop a story, the logistics of it all is very important because process enables habit, and habit is what gets things done. It's not magical moments where this divine thing comes into your head and you write the most perfect story in the world. That's very rare. That only happens in stories because again, that somebody came up with that. That's not real life. So that's the other one. The final thing is developing a voice. That's a very key thing. If I go back 20 years again and my 16-year-old gives me a poem I wrote, I would give it back to him. I was like, no, this is horrible. This is not like right. That's what you have to do to yourself. If you write a story this year, next year read it again. Find out how your voice has changed. Like voice is so much important than any of those things I told you right now. Anyone can practice. Anyone can say, okay, I can write sensory details. I can do all that. I don't have to edit a empty thing. And all those things I told you, it's very important. But if you don't have a unique voice when I say unique, I don't mean you can even understand what your own voice is until you practice it, and then you go through all these iterations of being a writer and being a storyteller and understanding, okay, this is my voice. And the sad thing about the voice is every time you figure out this is my voice, a new idea, a new story comes along, and you have to adapt your voice, and it completely changes your voice forever. So when you line up all the work you've done, it doesn't have to be years worth of work. I can see it clearly because I have nothing much going on. I kept writing in my life. But if you're just starting out, a month, like two different stories, like write one story today and like 3 weeks later try another one. That will show you how your voice changed. And we live in the world of social media, and I was a part of this trap as well. That the minute you write something, you want to show your friends, like, "Hey, look at this," and put this on top of the fridge. And that's not the way I suggest you go about it. Uh, the more unpublished work you have, more free you will feel, more uh, more more free you will feel, and the more free you feel, it's easier to create because nobody's asking you to write a new story. Nobody's asking you to do all this because you haven't shared with the world like this. I'm writing stories. I'm not saying like don't hide in some kind of a cave and not go out, be a recluse. No, it's about being selective because this is art. This is coming from you, like so this is very divine and holy to you. So I suggest this is not a hard and set fast rule. Like I said, this is just a suggestion that don't get trapped into the whole how the world is working. Like you don't have to tell the world everything. So just keep some for yourself. Keep the magic alive. Because once you give away the magic to the people, once they realize, they say like once you see how sausage is being made, right, that's exactly the same. You don't really care. So once you preserve that magic, and when you select when a story gets needs to go out, that's very powerful. Uh, Bradbury will talk about more about this. But when you watch that lecture, the one thing he tells you is that do not write novels. Do not start with that. Right, start with short stories. I'll talk a little bit about short stories, and I'll go to questions. Like if you're writing short stories, like the biggest advice I can give you is uh, start as close to the end as possible. Don't start with the alien left his planet of this in 5,000 light years ago. Nobody cares. Like nobody wants to know that part. So start as close to the action and the final resolution as possible. That's what makes it a short story. Otherwise, it's a novella. I don't know, like a really long short story. That's not what you want to do. The brevity is very important. All the other things I talked about, like sensory details, everything matters. But uh, you don't have to resolve short stories. Novels need tight ends. Novel. Um, Something I learned from Supernatural was this: any monkey with a keyboard can start a story. Like it's not that difficult. Anyone can do that. But ending a story, giving a resolution is really important. But I do not believe that you have to do that in short stories. You can just end where you want to end because it's your story. So just be brave. Break all the rules I told you today. Like everything I told you, it's up to you to break them because if everybody follow rules and write stories, we'll all write the same story because there's rules. That's what rules are, right? Like that's why we all adhere to the code of laws because that's a law. You can't break it. And then there's fines and jail time and all that. But with creativity, there's nothing like that. You can uh, break these things, and you have to break these rules, and you have to be brave. Uh, it's it's an act of rebellion writing a story. It's an act of standing up for yourself and saying, no, this is how the world works in my head. This is how I see the world. So pour a bit of yourself into stories. That's why I asked you to do that exercise in the beginning. Like, if there is a way you can bring that sensation you felt in the story I picked for your next story. So if you're writing a short story, and if it's about whatever it is, and it's about somebody forgetting something, you can go back to the moment where you forgot your laptop, and then you can write about that. So most of my short stories have bits of me that I've hidden in there. So I I highly suggest you, if you want to tell more stories, please do tell more stories. If you think it's been done before, nobody cares. There's billions of pictures of sunsets. Your version really matters. Your voice really matters. The way you tell the story is so unique. You need to leave it in the human tapestry, in the human story. You have to believe in your own vision because it's not about like for example, like when Tolkien, I've talked about. about Dune because it's one of my favorite stories. And when Frank Herbert wrote it, he was inspired because he went to the beach with his kids and saw a dragonfly fly over a dune, and he thought, "Ooh, that's cool." And then he created this entire world and this political system, these beliefs, and all these things. And nobody wanted to publish it. He was only accepted by a publisher who printed manuals for cars because that was too much of a big story at that time. And so if he didn't keep fighting for his story, nobody will see, like, these things. And Timothy Chalamet will be just another actor. Like, like you don't know what the impact of your story is until you write it, finish it, somebody reads it, and you die, and 100 years go by, and somebody picks up the book and be like, this is not a bad story. And that's the impact you have on the course of humanity. So believe in stories, believe in the words, and keep writing. That's pretty much it.
Thank you so much, Vishwa. That was an amazing session, and you just nailed it like at one go. I mean, the entire thing was so smoothly done. And yes, now it's chance for our um, audience to ask questions. Uh, I know there are many members from different clubs, mainly from SIyane Toastmasters, but also there are members from Calania Toastmasters, Kampa Professionals, and also I think someone from Colombo Toastmasters was also here. So yes, it's your chance now. Please ask questions from our resource person because he's here to help you in learning about storytelling.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So I have a question.
hmm
Is there a limitation of words or pages for a short story?
How long is a piece of string? That's the answer I can give you. Like, because it has to be long as it's gonna get. Like, the general rule is 7,000 words is kind of long. But anything below that is considered a short story. But that's very subjective and debatable. If you can keep it under 7,000 words, that's perfect. But there is no hard and set rule about that. The the general rule is 7,000, but I've seen short stories longer than that and way shorter than that. So like this new modern world has broken it down to like different bits as well. Like there's micro and all these things. Like you can write a short story in 250 words or 500,000, 2,500 and all these things. But there's generally no rule. But everybody agrees 7,000. After 7,000, it starts to sounds like a novella. So it just crosses into a different territory.
Okay, thank you.
Hmm?
Yes. Again, it's your chance to ask questions, dear Toastmasters. So until someone asks a question,
Mm.
I would like to ask something from Vishwa. So,
Yeah,
so your day job, you have a day job, right?
yeah, I
You
do.
work
I
as
do.
an
I do.
engineer. So
Yeah,
how
yeah,
do
I
you
mentioned.
balance like make time for writing something like long term? Like how do
Uh,
you make time from your day?
I it's like a waxing and waning energy. Sometimes some days you have this really good creative energy. Some days you have nothing to give. So it's a practice of trying to find time is a difficult thing because that doesn't really work. So every day I had this alarm, like this reminder that goes off at 8:45, just says right. And most of the days at 8:45, I'm putting my daughter down to sleep. I'm cleaning the house, and that just goes unnoticed. And then around 11 o'clock, I sit down, and if I have the energy, I do some free writing. Like I don't really have a goal, but I still write kind of thing because I have to keep that muscle alive. So I do something like that. But if I'm doing a competition, of course, I set aside time. If I come up with a really good idea and I feel like, okay, this has got legs, I'm gonna focus on this. So most of the time it's the weekends. Most of the time it's after work. So it ties back to the thing I talked about, the process. So if it's more like you write on the go, then it's easy because you can use your commute. So so in an ideal world, I would be waking up at 12 o'clock in the middle of the day and then just hang around till 6 in the evening, and then I would write till 4 in the morning. That's how most of these big writers do, and that's the dream. But the dream doesn't really happen. So but still you have to practice your craft. So I would suggest finding out what works for you and then just practicing that. Me personally, I mostly write at night after the world quiets down. Peppermint tea, incense stick, and then just listening to my weird music, and I just write. That's how I got the novel done, and that's how I get most of my short stories done. Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Vishwa.
Mhm.
So, is there any more questions? Now it's your chance.
Yeah. So first of all, Vishwaya, really, really interesting session. You
Thank
kept
you.
us all hooked for throughout the entire of the 45 minutes.
Mhm.
So my question is, a short story, being a short story,
Mhm.
how does someone decide which part should they omit from the short story without losing that emotional impact they are giving?
That's a really good question. Like, I personally had to done, I have to do that because uh, the concept there is it's a rather really good writing advice is kill your darlings. Like that's something you really have to do. You would write a short story and you realize, look, if I leave this part in, it's gonna confuse because I'm not conveying the right way. But most of the time, for me personally, what happens is I start with the darling, like, I start with this really nice piece of like 4 to 5 lines, and I write the story, and I realize, yeah, that needs to go because now the rest of the story is built. I just have to get rid of that part. So that's why it's really important to like give a beat. Like, once you write a story, just go for a walk, just like take a shower, call a friend, or just watch something, or just like unwind and decompress and come back as a new person and read it out loud, like actually read it out loud. Then you recognize the parts that don't work, and 90% of the time it's the part you really like, and that's the unfortunate part of being a writer. Sometimes you have to get rid of the part you really love, and that's just that's just business. That's how it works. So yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Mm.
Thank you, Nawada. And do you have any more questions? Right. Before we wind up, I have one more
Yeah.
question. So,
Mhm.
um, um, when it comes to writing the let's say the rewarding part
Mhm.
for the reader, when you go through the story, at the end there should be some kind of a reward. That can be like something, some good thing that happens to the main character, or maybe getting to the conclusion of the story with a grandeur ending or something like that.
Yeah.
How do you like know that this part is enough? Like the readers will be like satisfied by reading this ending. How to make your ending
Uh,
better? Do you have like try and error,
okay.
trial and error thing, or
So if you read all my short stories, most of them end with the first line again. Because I believe in a circle. I believe like like one of the when you're writing a novel or when you're telling a story, one of the models is the hero's journey. All right, like somebody says like, hey, you want to go on an adventure? Because there's only two types of stories according to most writers. A person goes on an adventure, or stranger comes into town. Those are the two stories we write. Everything else is just somehow ties back to that. So in hero's journey is like, man, a person goes on an adventure, right? So they always use the same kind of thing, and at the end of the day they come back home. They've changed, but they're still back home. So like I like to use the first line and the same last line. Most of the like the short story I wrote, Cole's song, uh and other stories I've written, like they all have that characteristic of like starting with this first line and then it ends with the same line, and it just creates this nice loop. But it doesn't have to be like that. I've ended stories in like really bad places, like just abruptly I stopped writing and I'm like, oh, that's enough, plenty. That's good, because I like to make the reader angry a little, because like you said reward. Sometimes even in life the reward is disappointment, so I like to give them that little bit of taste of life in a story. But back in the day, the easiest one was "and they lived happily ever after." So I think that's actually how a story should end. It's just I like to play with people's emotions when I'm writing. But if you want to write a really good story and if you want to give a really good ending, resolution really matters. Like it needs to be like, okay, so they got what they wanted, or they didn't get what they wanted, but they realized why didn't they get it. So that kind of there is no, I don't think everybody should get what they wanted at the end of the story, because that's not how it should work. But if the character realizes why it wasn't like that, if the character feels satisfied at the end, I think that's a good way to uh, end a story. So one of my favorite books when I was a kid was the Alan Quatermain. Uh, it's one of my favorite stories, because it's a massive adventure, and at the end of it, spoilers by the way, Alan Quatermain dies. But somehow his friend finishes the story, and it says like he died a happy death. He was surrounded by the people he loved, and even though death is the saddest part, and the death of the main character, like the character is the saddest thing, even though he's the narrator, you can still end them and then still give the reward to the reader saying, look, they went on the journey, they, they had to do what they had to do, but now they're resting, so, uh, it's a bit of a morbid thing, but I like to hang out in cemeteries sometimes, because it's a very quiet place. Nobody shouts there. It's very quiet. I walk around collecting names for stories, like people's names, because people keep forgetting, and all that. And that's what I like at a story. Rest. The main character rests finally, and then, because I told you, right, it's all stories about humans going through pressure, and once the pressure is done, the story ends. That's how I see it.
Right.
Hmm.
Thank you so much, Vishnu. So,
Yeah.
before we wind up, I wanted to know, like, would you like to tell the audience about your upcoming projects,
Hmm.
books, and all? This is your
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, so at the end of the year, I am planning to release my single short story collection, which is going to be really weird. I'm going to give you a spoiler. It's horrible. It's going to be a bit jarring, and that's something I always wanted to do, because when I was a kid, I read a lot of single short story collections. A lot of it will be sci-fi, because that's something I grew up with. And then the English short story collection, which is mostly the competition stories rewritten to fit the more relaxed form of short storytelling. And then the novel should be done one of these days. I have a little bit to go, but I haven't got a lot of time. But the novel will come out, so that will be in the whole genre of Indian steampunk, which is a world that I've created. Which is a lot of mythology, a lot of history, a lot of it's an adventure lens, like the story is about an adventure, but that's what's going to happen. Get a couple of songs that should come out as well. Other than that, I'm mostly focusing on the short story collections, because that's been my thing. Like when I started writing, I was like, oh, I can't write a novel because I haven't written a short story. I can't write a short story because I haven't written a novel. So this deadlock is coming to an end, and I feel like short story should go first. So that's what's going to happen. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
All right.
Hmm.
So, thank you so much, Vishwa, for that truly
Okay, so I
inspiring
got
and
another
inspiring session.
question.
Yes,
One
please.
more question, please, for someone who prefers writing English short story. What tense should be used? Is it past tense? Tense is a personal choice. I personally like past tense, because then because you can say like, okay, this is the story that happened. So you can try present tense as well. It depends on the POV you use. So for like first person, past tense really works because it sounds like a narration. So like if I'm the alien in my example, I'd be like, so I landed on Earth and I walked to PETA, and so that sounds like some lived experience. It works in third person and omnipresent as well because it's more like uh, it's a lived experience and it's more relatable. That's what I found out. But play with the tense and see. Whatever you do, don't tense slip in the middle. That's something I learned the hard way at a competition. So like tense slipping is the actual problem. Like you write in past tense in the beginning and then the middle you just drop a little bit. Sometimes you have to because how language is made. But yeah, past tense works and past tense is really, really beneficial sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
Do you have any more questions?
Anyone?
Right.
Eh?
So, right. Okay.
Mm.
So I think we have no more questions. So,
Yeah.
yes, and thank you so much, Vishwa, once again for that truly inspiring and insightful session. And
Yeah.
this was not just about writing stories; it was about finding the courage to start. And what makes this even more special is that uh, you took your time to share your knowledge and experience with us. um, yes, so that generosity and willingness to give back is something I deeply appreciate. And on
Thank you.
behalf of SIyane Toastmasters Club and everyone who joined today, thank you once again, Vishwa. And
Uh,
also to everyone who joined us today.
mm,
This doesn't end here. Take what you learned today, write that first story, and bring it to life
mm.
at our Tales Around the Fire short story competition we are having at SIyane Toastmasters Club. So all are welcome. Even non-members of our club can join this competition. And yes, thank you everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye.